Welcome to EchoShade, where history whispers its darkest secrets and forgotten stories.
The year was 1586, and the air over London was thick with anticipation, whispers, and hidden menace. In the heart of the city, the majestic silhouette of the Palace of Whitehall loomed under the dim winter sun, its spires casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets below. Within those walls, Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, sat enthroned, a figure of unrivaled authority and perilous solitude. The court around her shimmered with opulence, velvet gowns, embroidered doublets, and polished jewels, but beneath the glittering surface, danger festered like a hidden wound. Elizabeth had long learned that the grandeur of her crown carried with it the weight of relentless scrutiny, envy, and treachery. She had ascended to the throne in 1558, inheriting a kingdom still scarred by religious upheaval, civil strife, and political betrayal. Each day of her reign had been a careful dance. One misstep could mean her life, her crown, or the very stability of England. The Virgin Queen had become a master of observation, reading intentions as one might decipher the faint tremor of a candle flame in a darkened hall. Yet, even for Elizabeth, the current atmosphere was more ominous than usual. Letters arrived in cryptic handwriting, intercepted by loyal spies, warning of plots hatched beyond the seas and deep within her own court. The Catholic powers of Europe, Spain, France, and the papacy, had grown impatient with Elizabeth's Protestant rule. Secret alliances formed in shadowed chambers, and England's enemies whispered of regicide, strategy to replace the Queen with a pliant successor who would restore Catholic dominion. Inside the royal chambers, Elizabeth's trusted advisors moved with quiet efficiency. Sir Francis Walsingham, her spymaster, was a figure of constant vigilance. His hawk-like eyes missed nothing. Every servant, every noble, every courier was under the scrutiny of his network. "Your Majesty," Walsingham would often say, his voice measured, "the world outside these walls is a nest of vipers. Even those who bow before you in the morning may plot your downfall by nightfall." Elizabeth listened, nodding imperceptibly, aware that the venom of ambition often wore the mask of loyalty. The first incident came unexpectedly. A grand banquet had been organized to celebrate the recent victory over the Spanish privateers along the English coast. The hall was alive with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the rich aroma of roasted meats and spiced wines. Nobles from across the kingdom had arrived, their faces radiant with self-importance, unaware that a threat lurked among them. Elizabeth sat at the high table, her posture regal, her eyes scanning the assembly with practiced alertness. The food was lavish, a feast of roasted venison, sweetmeats, and fine wines imported from France and Spain. Every detail was meticulously arranged, yet Walsingham had detected an anomaly, a subtle trace of poison in a cask of wine, a gift from an ostensibly loyal courtier. The Queen's instincts, honed over decades of rule, alerted her to the danger before she could taste the treachery. "The wine?" she murmured to a discreet attendant. "Bring another cask." One not touched by these hands. The courtier, unaware of the Queen's awareness, bowed with a smile, oblivious that his silent attempt had been thwarted. This incident was only the beginning. As Elizabeth retired to her private chambers that evening, she pondered the intricate web of deceit woven around her. Who among her courtiers could harbor such lethal intent? Was it the ambitious Earl of Essex, eager to curry favor with foreign powers, or perhaps a foreign envoy secretly pledging allegiance to Spain? The uncertainty gnawed at her, yet she concealed it behind the mask of composure that had become her armor. In the weeks that followed, whispers of conspiracy grew louder. Walsingham's network uncovered coded letters exchanged between English traders and Catholic agents abroad. These documents spoke of 3 distinct assassination attempts, each more cunning and audacious than the last. The Queen's enemies did not merely wish to end her life. They sought to destabilize England, to plunge the realm into chaos, and replace her with a monarch of their choosing. Elizabeth's days became a meticulous exercise in vigilance. Every banquet, every audience, every casual greeting could conceal peril. She began to observe the smallest details, the tremor of a servant's hand, the fleeting glance of a noble, the subtle rearrangement of a chair or plate. Each anomaly was catalogued, each suspicion noted. The Queen's mind became a chessboard, with every move of the court scrutinized for hidden threats. It was during one such afternoon, as Elizabeth moved through the sunlit corridors of Whitehall, that she encountered the first real confrontation. A young page approached, bearing a sealed letter marked with the insignia of a foreign ambassador. Elizabeth, aware that couriers could be bribed or coerced, did not accept the letter immediately. Instead, she instructed Walsingham's agents to examine it for tampering. The paper, though elegant, had been treated with a subtle toxin, one that could have rendered the Queen unconscious within moments. The attempt, like the first, was foiled by the Queen's foresight and her spy master's diligence. Despite the danger, Elizabeth refused to succumb to fear. She understood that a ruler who allowed terror to dictate her actions would be doomed. Instead, she used the threats as a tool, learning the names, faces, and methods of her would-be assassins. The first attempt, though thwarted, revealed patterns. Poison was the weapon of choice, a silent, insidious method capable of striking from anywhere within her court. Elizabeth's relationship with her courtiers became even more complex. Trust was a fragile commodity, and she wielded it like a blade. Those who had once approached her with candor now found themselves under scrutiny, their loyalty questioned with every word and gesture. The court was a theater of masks, each noble hiding ambitions and secrets behind polite smiles and graceful bows. And in this theater, the Queen alone held the script. As the days turned into weeks, the shadow over the throne deepened. Elizabeth's enemies had grown bold, emboldened by the notion that the Virgin Queen, despite her intellect and experience, was still vulnerable. The poisonings were not random. They were part of a meticulously orchestrated campaign designed to destabilize her rule and claim the English crown for foreign powers. But Elizabeth was no ordinary monarch. She had survived decades of political maneuvering, rebellions, and plots. Her mind was a fortress, her will unyielding. The Queen understood that to survive, she must embrace both caution and cunning. Every meal, every drink, every interaction was now a test of loyalty and vigilance. The first act of treachery, though foiled, left a mark. Elizabeth could no longer view her court with casual confidence. She walked the corridors of Whitehall with measured steps, her eyes alert, her senses attuned to the slightest hint of danger. Every smile could hide a dagger, every compliment a veiled threat. And yet, in the face of such peril, she remained unshaken, her regal bearing a testament to her resilience. By the end of Part 1, the first assassination attempt had been uncovered, but the Queen knew the danger was far from over. Across the kingdom and beyond, conspirators whispered, planned, and schemed, each hoping to find the moment when the Queen's guard might falter. Elizabeth's court had become a battleground of intellect, secrecy, and deadly ambition. A world where survival depended on wit, intuition, and the ability to read the unspoken intentions of those around her. The shadow over the throne had only begun to stretch its fingers, and in the weeks to come, Elizabeth would face threats more cunning, more insidious, and more lethal than she could have imagined. The poisoned court had awakened, and the game of survival had only just begun. The court of Queen Elizabeth I, though radiant with splendor and ceremony, had become a labyrinth of shadowed intentions and hidden alliances. Every day in Whitehall brought whispers that wound through corridors like venomous snakes, every conversation a potential trap. The first attempt on Elizabeth's life had shaken the court, yet the Queen's resilience only fueled the ambitions of her enemies. They understood that the Virgin Queen's survival was not merely an obstacle, it was a challenge, a puzzle to be solved with cunning, patience, and ruthlessness. Elizabeth, ever vigilant, walked the halls with her customary grace. Yet a subtle tension had woven itself into her every gesture. Servants, nobles, and ambassadors alike noted the slight sharpness in her gaze, the brief pause before her smile, as though she weighed every soul before granting them the gift of her favor. The court, which had once functioned as a theater of loyalty and spectacle, had become a cage of suspicion. Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's unwavering spymaster, had grown restless with the limitations of official intelligence. Informants sent coded letters and messages, carrying intelligence that hinted at plots so intricate they seemed more like puzzles than plans of murder. Walsingham pored over intercepted correspondence with meticulous care, decoding ciphers and cross-referencing names, searching for patterns that would reveal the conspirators' next move. It was during this period that the Queen received news of a second, more audacious assassination attempt. Unlike the first, which had been relatively crude, a poisoned wine cask intercepted just in time, this plot bore the mark of a calculated strategist. The conspirators had infiltrated the very heart of her court, planting agents among those closest to her. Even a trusted confidant could carry a dagger, and every seemingly benign gesture could conceal the deadly intent of a traitor. Elizabeth summoned her inner circle to discuss the intelligence. Among them were Walsingham, the wise and loyal Sir William Cecil, and a handful of her most trusted courtiers. The room was hushed, the weight of impending danger hanging like a dense fog. "Your Majesty," Walsingham began, his voice taut with urgency. "The web of conspiracy is broader than we imagined. There are agents within your court who answer to foreign powers. We have intercepted letters suggesting a plan to strike when you least expect it, by gift, by poison, or perhaps by the hand of someone you hold dear." Elizabeth listened in silence, her mind tracing the possible permutations of betrayal. She had learned long ago that paranoia, when disciplined and strategic, was a tool of survival. Her intuition, sharpened over decades of rule, told her that these plots were not isolated incidents but a coordinated effort. The conspirators sought to destabilize her reign and perhaps to frighten her into inaction. The days passed with Elizabeth maintaining her routines, masking her unease with the poise of a monarch who had weathered far greater storms. She attended council meetings, granted audiences to foreign emissaries, and presided over court ceremonies, all while carefully monitoring the faces around her. Every smile, every bow, every curtsy was examined for hidden meaning. She learned to detect the faintest tremor in a noble's hand, the subtle shift in a servant's posture, and the almost imperceptible glance exchanged between conspirators. It was during one of these ordinary days, amid the ceremonial pageantry of Whitehall, that the second assassination attempt began to unfold. A gift arrived for the Queen, a delicate casket enameled in gold, delivered by a servant who appeared ordinary, but was in truth the conduit for treachery. Inside the casket was a jewel, glittering with the brilliance of uncounted carats, yet tainted with the most lethal poison. The conspirators had chosen their weapon with precision, knowing that Elizabeth's curiosity and appreciation for beauty might tempt her to touch it, to admire it, or even to wear it. Yet the Queen's instincts were unmatched. She did not immediately open the casket. Instead, she called for Walsingham, who carefully examined the gift. Using his knowledge of toxins, he identified the danger and revealed the subtle design intended to deliver the poison upon contact. Once again, Elizabeth's life had been spared by vigilance, intelligence, and the sharp eyes of her loyal spymaster. The second attempt, however, left a deeper scar. It was no longer merely a threat from distant powers. It was a betrayal from within, a demonstration that even those who appeared closest to her could be manipulated by ambition, fear, or ideology. The court became a place of silent accusations, whispered suspicions, and veiled confrontations. Nobles who had once sought favor now feared missteps, while servants walked the corridors with measured caution. Every gesture, every word, became a potential indicator of loyalty or treachery. Amidst this tension, Elizabeth's own mind began to wrestle with the psychological toll of constant vigilance. Sleep became fragmented, dreams haunted by shadows, and even the laughter of courtiers sounded hollow and suspicious. Yet the Queen did not falter. She understood that leadership demanded not only courage, but also the ability to endure isolation, to navigate a world where trust was scarce, and where danger could appear as elegance and civility. The conspiracy was not limited to her immediate court. Beyond England, foreign powers conspired in the quiet of palaces, taverns, and monasteries. Catholic agents plotted in Spain, France, and Rome, exchanging coded messages and planning to exploit any weakness. Elizabeth's survival was a threat to their designs, and they employed every stratagem of subterfuge, poisons, disguised weapons, and even the use of sympathetic courtiers as unwitting pawns in a deadly game. In the midst of this growing peril, Elizabeth relied heavily on her intuition. She observed her enemies and allies alike, noting inconsistencies and subtle gestures that betrayed hidden motives. She began to set subtle tests within her court, offering information to certain individuals, observing their reactions, and tracing their movements to reveal potential conspirators. Every interaction was a calculated maneuver, a piece in a larger chess game of survival and strategy. The Queen also drew strength from her understanding of her own legend. Elizabeth had cultivated the image of the Virgin Queen, a symbol of stability, purity, and divine right. That image, however, was more than mere spectacle. It was a weapon. Her enemies underestimated her resilience, her intelligence, and her capacity for ruthless self-preservation. They saw only the regal pageantry and the elaborate ceremonies, not the calculating mind that orchestrated every move from behind the throne. Meanwhile, the second assassination attempt intensified the atmosphere of fear and suspicion. Servants whispered of unexplained illnesses, minor poisonings among courtiers, and sudden accidents that seemed too coincidental to ignore. Elizabeth realized that these were not mere coincidences. They were tests, probes designed to measure the vigilance of her court and to find the path of least resistance. The Queen's response was both subtle and decisive. She increased the scrutiny of her court, rotating guards, inspecting food and drink, and monitoring communications with unparalleled diligence. Walsingham's spies reported constantly, bringing information that ranged from trivial gossip to intelligence of life-threatening import. The court became a living puzzle, a network of connections, loyalties, and betrayals that Elizabeth navigated with the precision of a master strategist. And then, amid this tense environment, a whisper reached the Queen, an encrypted message intercepted from a foreign agent, suggesting a third and final attempt, one that would be executed not through distant plots or intercepted gifts, but through someone close enough to touch her life directly. The conspirators had learned from their failures. They would not strike with obvious poison or distant scheming. Instead, they would employ intimacy, trust, and proximity, choosing the most insidious path yet. Elizabeth's mind, ever analytical, began to consider possibilities. Could it be her physician, entrusted with her health? A favorite attendant chosen for their perceived loyalty? Or even a noble whose public service masked private ambition? The threat was no longer abstract. It was personal, immediate, and unavoidable. As Part 2 draws to a close, the Queen understood the stakes more vividly than ever. Her life was enmeshed in a web of conspiracy, each strand taut with the potential to strike. The second attempt had been a warning, a demonstration of the cunning and audacity of her enemies. The court, once a realm of order and ceremony, had become a theater of shadows, where every smile could mask a blade and every gift could conceal death. Elizabeth's resolve hardened. She would meet this danger not with fear, but with foresight. The game of survival had intensified, and the Queen, ever vigilant, was determined to emerge not merely alive, but triumphant. The third attempt would come, and when it did, she would be ready. The web of conspiracy had grown, spreading its shadow over the throne. Yet within that shadow, Elizabeth I remained undaunted, a monarch of unparalleled intellect, courage, and cunning. The court of Elizabeth I, once a stage of grandeur and ceremony, had transformed into a battlefield where shadows moved with purpose, and even the brightest light could not reveal the lurking dangers. Every footstep in Whitehall echoed with the unspoken question: who could be trusted? The second attempt on the Queen's life had been foiled, yet it left behind an unsettling truth. The conspirators had learned, adapted, and grown bolder. They were no longer striking from a distance. They were entering the very heart of her court. Elizabeth, with her characteristic poise, continued her public duties, appearing unshaken to the world. But within the walls of her chambers, she was ever vigilant. The knowledge that betrayal could come from someone she held dear gnawed at her mind. A favorite attendant, a trusted page, even her personal physician. Any could be the instrument of death. The poison that had once arrived in a jeweled casket had been a message, but the next would be far more intimate, more insidious, and more difficult to anticipate. Sir Francis Walsingham, her loyal spymaster, had intensified his surveillance network. Agents were placed in every corridor, every passageway, and even among the servants who prepared the Queen's meals. The letters intercepted from Europe revealed patterns of collaboration among traitors, their communications encrypted in codes so intricate that even seasoned cryptographers had struggled to decipher them. Yet Walsingham, methodical and relentless, pieced together fragments of intelligence, revealing the outlines of a plan that could strike directly at the Queen's person. One autumn morning, as the mist clung to the rooftops of London, Elizabeth received a summons from her physician, Dr. Roderick Fenton. He was a man of impeccable credentials, trusted by the Queen for years, and skilled in the art of healing. Fenton presented a vial, claiming it contained a rare tonic to bolster her strength during the long days of council and court. His hands were steady, his voice soothing, yet Elizabeth's instincts, sharpened by years of danger, refused to allow complacency. She handed the vial to Walsingham's agents, who discreetly tested its contents. The results were chilling. The tonic was laced with a lethal compound, subtle in its application, capable of mimicking natural illness and striking slowly, imperceptibly. This was the third attempt. A betrayal from within, disguised as care and concern. Elizabeth did not confront Fenton immediately. Instead, she orchestrated a subtle investigation, careful not to alert other potential conspirators. The Queen's mind became a labyrinth of deduction. Her every thought focused on the identification of traitors hidden among the familiar faces of her court. She observed, listened, and tested, turning routine interactions into exercises of strategy and intelligence. The atmosphere in Whitehall grew increasingly tense. Courtiers moved with measured steps, aware that the Queen's scrutiny was now sharper than ever. Whispered conversations ceased in the corridors, and even servants altered their routines, uncertain if loyalty alone would protect them from suspicion. Elizabeth's court had become a theater of deception, where every gesture could be interpreted as an act of fidelity or treachery. Amid the tension, the Queen found solace in her inner circle, those few whose loyalty had been tested and proven. Walsingham and Sir William Cecil remained her pillars of support, offering counsel, intelligence, and unwavering dedication. Yet, even with their guidance, the Queen knew that the third assassination attempt could not be predicted solely through observation and caution. It demanded a strategy, a counterplay that would turn the conspirators' ambition against themselves. Elizabeth devised a series of controlled tests within her court. She allowed certain gifts to be delivered under observation, observed subtle interactions between courtiers, and introduced information designed to lure conspirators into revealing themselves. It was a dangerous game, but the Queen understood that survival required both intellect and courage. Every day brought new revelations, each one narrowing the circle of suspicion, each one bringing the assassins closer to exposure. The conspirators, emboldened by their previous failures, underestimated the Queen's resilience. They had assumed that the isolation and constant pressure of court life would weaken her, that the relentless anxiety of vigilance would cloud her judgment. Yet, Elizabeth had faced rebellion, religious extremism, and foreign plots throughout her reign. Fear was a tool for the weak. She wielded it as a weapon against those who sought her life. One evening, as a storm raged outside the palace, Elizabeth convened a private council. The room was dimly lit by flickering candles, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Walsingham presented the latest intelligence. Coded letters intercepted from Rome suggested that the conspirators intended to strike during a forthcoming council meeting where the Queen would be surrounded by her advisors and attendants. The plan was audacious, relying on timing, precision, and betrayal from someone in close proximity to the throne. Elizabeth listened intently, her mind calculating possibilities, contingencies, and countermeasures. She understood that the conspirators' greatest strength was secrecy, their greatest weakness the necessity of coordination. A single misstep, a moment of hesitation, could expose them to detection. In preparation, the Queen subtly rearranged the seating of her council, changed the timing of meetings, and instructed her trusted guards to remain vigilant without drawing attention. The third attempt was imminent, but she intended to turn it into an opportunity to catch the conspirators in the act and expose their treachery to the entire court. The day of the council arrived. The hall was filled with courtiers, advisors, and attendants, each unaware of the heightened vigilance surrounding them. Elizabeth entered with her customary grace, her demeanor calm yet commanding. Her eyes swept the room, noting the placement of every individual, the alignment of every gesture. The conspirators believed they were close to striking, yet they did not realize that the Queen had anticipated every movement. As the council proceeded, subtle signals were exchanged between courtiers, furtive glances, slight hand movements, and carefully coded phrases, until Elizabeth, attuned to every nuance, recognized the patterns immediately. She identified the conspirators not by confession, but by observation, their intentions betrayed by the smallest inconsistencies in behavior. When the moment came, the Queen acted with decisive precision. Guards quietly intervened, separating those under suspicion from the assembly, while Walsingham revealed the intercepted letters and coded messages that exposed their plot. Shock and confusion rippled through the hall as the conspiracy was unveiled before all present. The traitors once hidden in plain sight were now revealed, their ambition laid bare. Elizabeth addressed the court with a voice both firm and composed. "Let this be a lesson," she declared. "That treachery, no matter how cleverly disguised, will not go unpunished in my realm. Loyalty is the shield of the kingdom, deceit its downfall." Her words resonated through the chambers, leaving no doubt that the Virgin Queen's authority remained unchallenged, her intellect unmatched, and her vigilance unyielding. The aftermath of the third attempt was profound. The conspirators were arrested, interrogated, and dealt with according to the law of the land. Some were executed, others imprisoned, and a few spared under strict surveillance. The court, though still a place of tension, had been purged of its most dangerous elements. Yet Elizabeth knew that vigilance was a perpetual necessity. Every loyal subject must be watched, every ally tested, and every gesture scrutinized. Elizabeth's survival had come at a cost. The constant weight of suspicion, the erosion of personal trust, and the ever-present awareness that death could strike from the most unexpected quarter. Yet it also reinforced her mastery over the realm she had inherited and protected. Her reign, forged in fire and shadow, had emerged stronger, a testament to her intelligence, courage, and indomitable will. As Part 3 concluded, the Virgin Queen had survived not only the poison of treacherous hands, but the deeper poison of betrayal itself. She understood the nature of power, that it is as much a battle of intellect and perception as of armies and diplomacy. The poisoned court had revealed its darkest truths, yet even as the conspirators were unmasked, Elizabeth knew that the realm remained a landscape of danger, intrigue, and hidden ambition. And in the quiet moments when the candles flickered and the wind howled outside the palace walls, Elizabeth reflected on the trials she had endured. She was no longer merely a monarch. She was a survivor, a strategist, and a symbol of resilience. The shadow of conspiracy had not defeated her. It had sharpened her mind, strengthened her resolve, and illuminated the delicate, perilous art of ruling in a world where every smile could conceal a dagger. The third attempt had come close, closer than any before. But Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, remained unbroken, a beacon of cunning, courage, and relentless vigilance. The court, now aware of the lengths to which ambition and treachery could reach, would never underestimate her again. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The poisoned court had tested her intellect, patience, and resolve, and the Queen, ever watchful, was ready to ensure that justice and survival would prevail. The autumn wind rattled the windows of Whitehall Palace as Queen Elizabeth I entered the council chamber, her skirts whispering across the polished floor, and her gaze sweeping over every noble advisor and attendant present. The court was no longer a simple theater of ceremony. It had become a chessboard of strategy, ambition, and hidden blades. The poisoned court, as her enemies had come to call it, had sharpened its teeth against the Virgin Queen, yet she moved with unmatched poise, aware that survival demanded both vigilance and cunning. The third assassination attempt had been narrowly avoided, yet it had left an indelible mark on the Queen's perception of her court. Betrayal, she now knew, could hide behind every courteous bow and polished smile. Her enemies were cunning, organized, and relentless, yet they had underestimated the depth of her resolve. Every intercepted letter, every deciphered code, and every subtle observation now worked to her advantage. Elizabeth had learned that to confront her enemies effectively, she must turn the court into a controlled battlefield where their moves could be predicted, observed, and countered. She began subtle manipulations, altering seating arrangements, arranging audiences strategically, and feeding selective information to test loyalties. The Queen's presence alone became a tool. Courtiers, uncertain of her knowledge, betrayed themselves through overzealous gestures, nervous glances, or small inconsistencies in speech. Sir Francis Walsingham, ever watchful, advised the Queen on the intelligence that flowed from his vast network. He had discovered links between English traders and foreign Catholic agents, plots that stretched from London to Paris, Rome, and Madrid. Yet the Queen knew that knowledge alone would not suffice. The conspirators would strike quickly, violently, and unexpectedly if given the chance. To survive, Elizabeth required precision, decisiveness, and timing that matched her enemy's cunning. The first signs of escalation appeared during a council meeting, designed to discuss England's defenses against foreign threats. Courtiers, accustomed to routine, gathered unaware that their every movement was being scrutinized. Elizabeth entered, her presence commanding silence and attention. She had rearranged the seating, placing those suspected of disloyalty within the line of sight of her trusted guards and Walsingham's spies. A subtle signal passed between two courtiers, nearly invisible to the untrained eye. It was enough for the Queen to recognize the conspiracy's imminent activation. She moved with quiet authority, signaling her guards to observe without revealing the detection. This was not merely an act of self-preservation. It was a lesson, a demonstration that even the most sophisticated schemes could be unraveled by intelligence, foresight, and observation. The conspirators' plan was audacious. They sought to strike during the council, where the Queen was surrounded by loyalists and potential betrayers alike. Their intention was to administer poison, disguised as a medicinal tonic, delivered through someone within her inner circle. Yet Elizabeth had anticipated their tactics. She had allowed the seemingly innocent objects, the vials, the letters, the gifts, to pass under observation, noting reactions, body language, and the micro-expressions of fear or excitement that betrayed intent. The tension in the room became palpable. Courtiers shifted nervously, aware on some level that something was amiss, though none could articulate what it was. The Queen's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the chamber. She understood the psychology of fear. It was not merely a tool for intimidation, but a mirror reflecting the guilty mind. And in that reflection, the conspirators revealed themselves. One of the courtiers, a man whose ambition had long outstripped his loyalty, subtly reached toward a vial, intending to execute the poison. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, and with a slight, almost imperceptible gesture, a trusted guard intercepted the act. Walsingham, silently observing, stepped forward to seize the conspirator, and the room erupted in shock and confusion. Elizabeth addressed the court, her voice calm yet commanding. If a treachery that hides behind flattery and smiles is the most dangerous, those who plot against the crown shall find that every whisper, every secret, and every dagger is known to your queen. The conspirators, caught in their moment of action, were left with no plausible deniability. Their intentions were exposed, their plots laid bare, and their ambition crushed under the weight of justice and vigilance. Yet the danger had not been fully extinguished. The poisoned court was vast, and even as the conspirators were removed from their positions of influence, Elizabeth understood that the threat of betrayal would always linger. To govern was to navigate a world where loyalty was fragile, and ambition could corrupt even the most trusted servant. Every victory was partial, every triumph tempered by the knowledge that survival was an ongoing challenge. In the days that followed, the Queen undertook a series of measures to ensure that the court remained secure. Trusted agents were positioned strategically, surveillance of communications increased, and the administration of her household was refined to minimize risk. The conspirators who had been exposed were interrogated thoroughly, revealing networks of collusion, financing, and foreign support that had enabled the plots. Some faced execution, others imprisonment, all serving as a stark reminder of the price of betrayal. Elizabeth's personal resilience was tested as well. The psychological toll of constant vigilance weighed heavily, yet she drew strength from her understanding of power, strategy, and human nature. She had survived not only the physical threats, but the emotional strain of knowing that even the closest confidants could be instruments of death. Her awareness, intuition, and intellect had transformed what might have been weakness into a demonstration of unassailable authority. The court itself was irrevocably changed. Where once trust had been assumed, now it was earned. Where once loyalty had been measured by ceremony, now it was verified through observation and intelligence. Elizabeth's reign, already renowned for its political acumen and cultural flourishing, had now been tested by the most intimate threats imaginable. The Virgin Queen's reputation for wisdom, courage, and cunning was solidified, and her court learned that the path to favor must pass through vigilance and integrity. In the quiet of her private chambers, Elizabeth reflected on the ordeal. The third assassination attempt, close to succeeding, had revealed the depth of ambition, envy, and foreign intrigue surrounding her reign. Yet it had also revealed the Queen's own strength, or capacity to anticipate, strategize, and command with authority that transcended mere ceremony. The poisoned court had challenged her, but it had also reinforced her mastery over the realm and her unmatched ability to navigate danger. As Part 4 draws to a close, the stage is set for the final resolution. The conspirators, exposed and punished, have been removed from immediate power, yet Elizabeth understands that vigilance is eternal. The court, cleansed of its most dangerous elements, still contains shadows, ambition, and uncertainty. The Queen's triumph is both complete and provisional, a testament to her ability to survive, outwit, and govern in a world where the line between ally and assassin is perilously thin. The deadly game has reached its climax, and Elizabeth I, through intellect, courage, and relentless observation, has proven herself the master of survival. The poisoned court may have struck, but the Virgin Queen endures, her reign secure, her enemies exposed, and her legacy unassailable. The final confrontation, the reckoning of treachery, and the restoration of order awaits in Part 5, where the Queen will ensure justice, consolidate her authority, and emerge not merely as a survivor, but as the unchallenged sovereign of England. The winter sun cast a pale light across the walls of Whitehall Palace, yet warmth and light were scarce within the chambers of England's most perilous court. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, sat in quiet contemplation, her mind a labyrinth of strategy, vigilance, and reflection. The trials of the past months had left an indelible mark. The first 2 assassination attempts had revealed the cunning and audacity of her enemies, while the third had cut closer to her life than ever before. Now, with the conspirators exposed, the final reckoning approached, a moment when justice, strategy, and survival would converge. Elizabeth's court had never been a simple arena of loyalty and ceremony. It was a battlefield, and each courtier, noble, and servant had become a participant in a complex dance of intrigue. The exposure of the conspirators had demonstrated the depths to which ambition, envy, and foreign influence could reach. Yet the Queen, whose intellect and intuition had guided England through decades of danger, understood that revelation alone was not sufficient. True justice required action, precision, and the careful orchestration of consequences. The morning began with a council meeting unlike any Elizabeth had convened before. The hall was filled with courtiers, advisors, and guards, each aware that the events of the past months had changed the nature of the court. The conspirators, having been arrested, were to be brought before the assembly in a calculated display of authority. Their presence was intended to serve as both a warning and a demonstration. Treachery, no matter how cleverly disguised, would be met with the full force of royal justice. Sir Francis Walsingham, the Queen's ever-faithful spymaster, provided detailed intelligence on the network of conspirators. Letters, codes, and intercepted correspondence revealed the breadth of their ambitions, alliances with foreign Catholic powers, bribes exchanged for loyalty, and plots designed to destabilize England. The Queen listened attentively, absorbing every detail, understanding not only the immediate danger, but the wider implications for the realm. Every traitor was a symptom of a larger threat, and the response had to be both meticulous and resolute. Elizabeth rose to address the assembly. Her voice, calm yet commanding, filled the hall. The realm of England is built upon loyalty, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Those who seek to undermine it, to betray their sovereign and their nation, shall find that their ambition carries consequences both swift and certain. Her eyes scanned the room, lingering on each conspirator in turn. And no mask of civility can hide treachery. No whisper and shadow can escape the light of truth. The conspirators, previously confident in their secretive plots, now faced the full weight of exposure. Some faltered under the scrutiny, their composure unraveling in the presence of the Queen's piercing gaze. Others attempted defiance, but even bravado could not shield them from the evidence meticulously gathered by Walsingham's network. Letters, testimonies, and intercepted messages were laid bare, revealing the elaborate web of deceit, manipulation, and attempted murder that had plagued the court. Elizabeth had chosen her moment carefully. By presenting the conspirators in a public forum, she ensured that the lesson extended beyond punishment. It was a demonstration of the consequences of disloyalty, a reinforcement of the Crown's authority, and a testament to her own mastery of intelligence and strategy. The court, now fully aware of the depth of treachery that had existed within its walls, watched with a mixture of awe, fear, and respect. The administration of justice was swift and deliberate. The most culpable conspirators were sentenced to execution, their crimes including attempts on the Queen's life, collusion with foreign powers, and subversion of the realm. Others faced imprisonment, exile, or rigorous surveillance, ensuring that no further schemes could immediately threaten the court. Every decision was calculated to restore order while reinforcing the principles of loyalty and vigilance that Elizabeth deemed essential to governance. Amid the trials, Elizabeth reflected on the nature of power and survival. She had faced threats that were both immediate and insidious, yet each challenge had honed her skills in observation, deduction, and strategy. The poisoned court had tested not only her life but her intellect, her resilience, and her ability to maintain authority under constant pressure. Every smile, every gesture, and every interaction in her court now carried the weight of scrutiny. Yet the Queen had emerged stronger, wiser, and more formidable. Beyond the immediate court, the repercussions of the plots reverberated across England and Europe. Foreign powers, having witnessed the failure of their schemes, recalibrated their ambitions, recognizing that the Virgin Queen's intelligence network and strategic foresight were unmatched. Elizabeth's handling of the conspiracies elevated her reputation as a sovereign who could navigate the treacherous waters of politics, espionage, and human ambition with unparalleled skill. Yet, for all her public triumphs, Elizabeth was acutely aware of the personal toll. The isolation demanded by vigilance, the constant scrutiny of her advisors and courtiers, and the knowledge that betrayal could strike from the closest quarters weighed heavily upon her. She had learned that survival required not only strength of will, but also a disciplined mind capable of discerning truth from deception, loyalty from ambition, and threat from routine. In private, Elizabeth allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The challenges of the poisoned court had reinforced a lesson she had understood throughout her reign. That power is not a gift, but a responsibility, a force that demands intelligence, courage, and the capacity to act decisively. She had survived plots that might have undone lesser monarchs, navigated treachery with precision, and emerged not only unscathed but strengthened in authority and resolve. The final phase of the conspiracy's exposure included the restoration of order within the court. Loyal courtiers were rewarded for their steadfastness, trusted advisors were positioned strategically, and protocols for surveillance, communication, and intelligence were reinforced. Elizabeth's reign, already marked by cultural flourish, political acumen, and naval triumphs, now bore the additional distinction of having weathered one of the most intricate and dangerous plots against her life. As winter deepened, the palace returned to a semblance of routine, yet Elizabeth's vigilance never waned. She understood that the survival of a monarch depended not solely on strength or popularity, but on the constant exercise of wisdom, strategy, and foresight. The poisoned court had tested every facet of her character, yet she had emerged not only as a survivor, but as the unchallenged sovereign of England. In the quiet of her private chambers, surrounded by the symbols of her reign, Elizabeth contemplated the trials she had endured. The first 2 assassination attempts had revealed the cunning and audacity of her enemies, while the third had brought the threat into her immediate circle. Each challenge had demanded intellect, courage, and strategic foresight. Assassinate, and through it all, the Virgin Queen had maintained her composure, her authority, and her life. The legacy of the poisoned court would endure, not merely as a tale of danger and intrigue, but as a testament to Elizabeth's mastery of the art of survival. She had demonstrated that vigilance, intelligence, and decisive action were the keys to preserving authority and life in a world rife with ambition, envy, and treachery. Elizabeth the first of her reign, and emerged triumphant. The conspirators were punished, the court restored to order, and the realm secured, yet the lessons endured. Power demanded vigilance, loyalty must be earned, and the line between ally and assassin was perilously thin. As Part 5 concludes, the Virgin Queen stands resolute, a symbol of strength, intellect, and unyielding courage. The poisoned court had tested her, challenged her, and sought her downfall. Yet in surviving, Elizabeth had transformed peril into proof of her sovereignty. The threats of assassination, betrayal, and intrigue would continue to shape her reign. Yet the world now knew that the Virgin Queen of England was not merely a ruler. She was a master strategist, a survivor of the deadliest court, and a monarch whose authority and legacy were absolute. The shadows may linger, the plots may never fully cease. But Elizabeth Earth, one defended by intelligence, courage, and relentless vigilance, was a throne that would endure beyond the reach of treachery.